This is Victoria Amador. She's a QHHT practitioner. She also does BQH, past life regression. I've known her as a graduate of my very advanced spirit releasement therapy training process through my Past Life Awakening Institute.
The reason why I think that those that are QHHT practitioners should look into SRT as a training modality is because a lot of the issues, what I found is that with QHHT clients, they will have the one session initially. 2 weeks later or something like that, they will say, I felt great, I felt this, but something is still there. And that's how I started figuring out that something was really needed more than just QHHT. And the combination of doing SRT before even doing QHHT has been very powerful for a lot of my clients.
If you're doing a QHHT session or a past life regression session and entities come up, to me, that doesn't mean you have to address them in that moment. So I just want to make that clear. And so you should do what you set out to do, which is a QHHT session. And for me, I would just say get the message from it. Now, the message might be you do have to deal with it right now. And if that's the message, fine. But really find out what the real message is, because the message could be, we want you to understand that entities exist, and we want you to deal with them maybe next week, if you've got the ability to do that through your past training. But it happened a few times. So since it's happened a few times, I think I'm going to have to find out what this is and maybe get some advanced training from someone like me. But all of it is just like a little whisper that the universe is giving that, sooner or later, you can start learning SRT.
I do want to say, because I have to say this.
Yeah.
A lot of the times, the entity doesn't come and say, I'm here. A lot of the time, it's the spirit guides that are coming through, appearing as a spirit guide, and it's something else.
Okay.
So you see how the training is needed for people to be more responsible, because we're taking care of people. We are helping people. We have to be responsible.
Spirit releasement therapy, the main entities we work with are spirit guides. To me, it's a one guide who progresses through a number of lives with the client. They're with them in this life. They've been with them in past lives. They were with them in between lives, helping them decide in which one to reincarnate to. So I'm not talking about spirit guides or guiding spirits. I'm talking about your spirit guide who has a specific role, has known you for millennia, then earthbound spirits, and dark force entities. So earthbound spirits used to have a body, and often, human, and dark force entities didn't. And they're deceptive, they're lying, they're often in service of the darkness, and they're out to deceive and to make trouble and to prevent people from living their life purpose. And often that life purpose is the people that we see, being a healer or being a healed, healthy person. And so what Victoria is talking about here is, so there are three main types of entities. So I'll be interested on your take on that. But the first thing to notice here is the kind of spirit guides she's talking about. And spirit guides come up in past life regression and QHHT, and they're very helpful. And they're often used as being a key part of the session. And what Victoria's alluding to here, and it becomes a real problem, is if your spirit guide is actually a dark force entity. Because dark force entities lie, they deceive. And they can present themselves as being a spirit guide, but they're not. And then that can contaminate the session and cause
healing that can be received.
Exactly. And can block it and create all sorts of problems. This probably isn't that common. I would say, again, maybe Victoria is just, her numbers are a lot higher than average. But I would say this is kind of 5 or 10% of the time that this could happen. And you certainly need to watch out for it.
After I started taking SRT seriously, like, this actually works. I don't have to sacrifice and do so much to remove a spirit that is basically ready to go at the end of the day. Even though they might look like they're not, you can quickly enough help them understand so that they can transition. And again, in Spiritism, we call those regretful spirits. So they're ready. They just need help.
Yeah.
A lot of the time, these spirits are stuck. They cannot go into your transition. So they don't know how to release after they attach.
Yeah.
And that's what we do.
Part of the releasement processes that are, historically used often are quite directive and commanding. Like, I command you to release, exorcisms, or even things like, in the name of Jesus, I command you to be released, this kind of thing. The spirit releasement therapy doesn't really do that. we're just like, hey, dude, what are you doing? You look a bit lost, you look a bit confused, or you're coming at me, and so we're really about discussing with them, getting a narrative, getting information, not really telling them what to do, asking them questions. And then they come up with answers, and you're like, well, okay, given that answer, that means you have more freedom of choice than you might have thought. And they're like, oh, I suppose I do. Well, what choice would you make? Then they make the choice to release themselves rather than being told what to do. And the same, so that can happen for Earthbounds and Dark Forces. So is that a fair characterization, or how would you consider some of the distinctions or differences between some of the shamanic release or?
Well, like I said, we tend to be very assertive with these different, especially the ones that are more from the low astral planes. We tend to just hardcore send them without any communication whatsoever, because they're not there to negotiate. They're hardcore. Now, the ones that are regretful, then those are the ones that we're more kind to. In SRT, we're kind to all of them. So it's been a transition phase for me. Okay.
Yeah. I think dig deep enough and they're all regretful, And so by regret, and so some of them know that they've been tricked. And so that's the big part of what we see with DFEs. So this Dark Force entity Victoria's talking about, it's trying to trick you by pretending to be a spirit guide. And then so there are two things that happen. Firstly, they succeed and you don't know why your sessions didn't go that well. And you thought you did a good job and you thought you talked to the spirit guide, but you didn't realize you were being tricked. You were tricked, but you didn't know you were tricked. And then what can happen is if you are able to understand that you've been tricked, you can say, DFE, you tried to trick me by playing the spirit guide, but you couldn't. So you tried to deceive me, but you're a deceiver, but I was not deceived. And the same way that you would try to deceive me, but it failed, you in fact have been deceived yourself. The reason you're pretending to be a spirit guide and then messing with this person and making their life tricky, you've been deceived into acting as an agent for somebody that's you think you have a contract with,
right?
That you think you have to do the work of a dark master, and if you don't, you'll be punished, you'll be in trouble, all of that. And so we don't even necessarily have to tell them, get out of here. We can just say, understand, and then once they've been revealed, they may then start attacking us.
Right.
So they try to pretend that they're not a DFE and a spirit guide. Once you find them, and so you're tricked and you don't know you're tricked. Once you say, oh, you haven't tricked me, they'll say, well, instead of trying to deceive you, they may try and scare you. So those entities are like, I've been sent by Lucifer, and in fact, I am the dark one and the devil himself, and I'm going to mess with my client. And since you're trying to help them, I'm going to mess with you as well. And then they'll try and create fear on us. So there are two main methods: deception, lies, and fear. And so I would then say to them, you try to deceive me, it didn't work. Now you've switched tactics. Now you're trying to make fear in me, and that's not working either. Because fear is just not understanding reality. And I know the reality is you are working according to a contract that you don't have to, because you've been lied to and because you're afraid of the Dark Master. So they are really falling into their own trap. And so and then a lot of the work we do, this can take, a long time in discussion. You have long conversations to get them there, but to have them not be deceived by their master, their own self-deception, and not to be afraid of that one. And so they appear not regretful, because it's like, I love darkness and I love messing with people, and the devil's powerful and great and he's much better than you guys. So they appear not regretful. But once you get into it and they realize, I've been deceived, I didn't have to do that, I've got a contract which lasts forever, and they're also afraid, I'm doing this because ultimately if I don't do it, I'm going to be punished. And so there's a fear there. And so that once we can get them through their own fears and deceptions, ultimately they feel regret that I was afraid, that I was deceived to. So for me, we're nice to all of them because they're all basically regretful. Some of them are obviously regretful. Some of them are eventually regretful. Either way. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you're interested in having personal sessions or certification training in hypnosis or hypnotherapy, or regression to this life, past lives, between lives, or spirit releasement therapy, then visit my website, thepastlifeawakeninginstitute.com, for details.